I did not want to do this. I really, really did not want to do this. I was contemplating whether or not I should continue to do this, but the friend of mine who sent me the books was kind of egging me on to do this. So I guess curses to peer pressure to some degree. But, oh my gosh. Stones to Abbigale. This is the second book, or at least one of the other books, from our favorite, or infamous onion, Onision. For those who don't know who Onision is, are you living under a rock? I think that's the basic question, because this individual is infamous, especially when it comes to his drama with his past relationships, his fans, the way he treats women and young girls, the way he rates people, the fact that he kind of makes himself seem like he's superior to others, and a variety of other things, as well as, the Chris Hansen drama. But anyways, we are reviewing one of his books, or at least in some way reviewing and also reading it. And oh boy, I am not happy. By the way, hopefully you guys like the new background or avatar image that I have for the video. I was trying to think of something that would be part of horror, since, in a certain sense, looking at this book, it might send you, send you running in terror, because his books are a piece of shit. And honestly, it is a monster of a thing to try to read. So, in some regard, I decided to pick the classroom image of, or at least from Doki Doki, with the last segment where you're trapped forever with Monica. Just Monica. Just Monica. Just Monica. Just Monica. Just Monica. I'm done. I'm sorry. I'm trying to make some jokes so that we can kind of get set up with this. Again, I don't want to do this. But anyway. So, first page, and there's no table of contents or anything with this. That's the usual staple with some of these books. From the author, I wanted to be direct. My name is Greg. By the way, wait, I thought your name was James, Greg. I thought it was James, as you continuously try to tell us, is your name's James and not Greg. I go by Onision online. This book is made up of events that occurred in my life, mixed with fiction from the made-up life of James. Maybe that's why he decided to name himself James. Because, especially with a lot of the characters that he presents, they're pretty fucked up. James is essentially a better version of myself. His home, his school, and his life all resemble my own at his age. The people James analyzes and is surrounded by are not so unlike those I've known as well. I have experienced much of the loss James has. However, his happier moments are more often than not also mine. I'm going to read that again. I have experienced much of the loss James has. However, his happier moments are more often than not also mine. The fuck? I want to share my story without it being purely non-fiction. I simply felt this approach would make for a far better book. At points I cried while writing this. At others I laughed. Stone to Abbigale is not just a book I wrote. It is a piece of who I am. Special thanks, Lainey. Thank you for editing the first draft. Erica, thank you for pointing out 2 word errors. I'm pretty sure there's a lot more than that, but we'll continue. as you guys hear me flipping the page, going straight on to chapter 1. And oh boy, I am not happy about this. I was asleep until I met her. When I finally woke, I learned the meaning of perfect imperfection. What? What? And he has it in quotes too. So, okay. So you either are perfect or you're imperfect. There's no such thing as a perfect imperfection. What the fuck? I've always been the type of person to focus on stars as we spin beneath them, the cool breeze on a summer day, scattered patches of grass under my feet, the world around me, often forgetting to even glance at the one within. I had remained emotionally unexplored for so much of my life. You're really fucking boring from what it sounds like. It's painful knowing some can go on entire lifetime, like I think an entire lifetime, without understanding their own heart. An eternal lock waiting for the right key to change everything. Oh boy. It was the first Monday of November. I opened my eyes blinded by my recently painted wall-to-wall white room. Even my bed frame, constructed with purely metal, was painted white. It bounced off the walls, causing my eyelids to desperately clamp together. Painting my room like this was a clear act of subtle self-inflicted psychological torture. I was going through another phase. From darkness to light and repeat seemed like the story of my life. My mother could see the darker colors were depressing me. I felt comforted by them, but found there were good aspects of both extremes. I was happy to visit either side. They are both so simple, but right now the intense light bouncing from wall to wall felt like it was ripping my mind apart. Or would it be better to say mind apart instead of mind in two? I mean, I'm trying to like read this, and you guys will notice that there will be a couple times where I'm reading it and I'll blurt out something that actually sounds a lot better than what he actually fucking wrote. But anyway, continuing onward. My mom didn't wake me. My alarm clock sat on my dresser with no explanation for its failure to function. The clock only illuminated a blank stare with 8:17 written all over its face. Okay. I'm trying to understand how that sentence makes sense. Considering the fact that I might be overthinking, but it's a digital clock. Let's say if it's a digital clock or a regular clock with the, time hands and everything. That sentence was kind of weird. While entirely robotic, I imagine the clock to have the dumbest possible expression. One complementing its failure to behave any way outside its random, glitch-infested nature. In the reflection of its plastic face, I could see myself unconsciously making the dumb expression I was imagining the clock to have. I laughed in my casual, dorky tone and began to get ready to leave home. Without breakfast, I left for school with a bogus note in hand to idealistically explain my tardiness. I think most of my teachers were too exhausted to worry about small variances in our appearance from time to time. With how low they pay their pay likely was, I imagine there were very few rules most teachers cared about. It was another cold day in Lakewood. The wind hit my eyes, forcing tears to form in the corners as I sped along the sidewalk at a no doubt unreasonable speed. Wouldn't it just be better just to say unreasonable speed? Well, whatever. I passed Lauren and Raymond walking the opposite direction, no doubt heading towards the nearby church where all the students go to smoke, make out, and hide out till school ends. They seemed so childish as they held hands and smiled excitingly, as if they had gotten away with some tremendous crime. Mr. Hanson, my heavy-set middle-aged history teacher, rolled his eyes as I walked into class. James talked to me after class. James talked to me after class. I had going back from page to page. He said quickly, looking away from me as if I were an undervalued employee who was barely important enough to make eye contact with, let alone deliver a full sentence to. I have a note, I said. He ignored me and continued his lecture on yet another topic that would not only be completely useless later in life, but wasn't even relevant for even a few seconds after the words left his mouth. How so? Plus, especially when it comes to history, it's best to know our history, considering the fact that history does repeat itself. And again, as I pointed out before, there'll be times where I stop to comment on some of this because it's stupid. But anyways, continuing on, we're on page 3. There was only 15 minutes left. I'm gonna stop doing that voice. There was only 15 minutes left in class, but I felt it would be more stimulating to integrate myself into the room, yet again study my classmates' behavior, than to sit in the hall watching the rows of scum-covered tiles inevitably slide off the decaying wall. For as long as I remember, I've enjoyed seeing how people move around and talk to each other, like they're all animals at the zoo. I would try to deliver a more accurate analogy if I felt there was one, but so many of them seemed incredibly unaware of themselves, just living life as if it were some generic, predefined routine. Sometimes I felt like an alien who had a VIP pass to submerge myself in primitive human culture just for entertainment. Now, here's my question. Like, reading a paragraph like that, here's my question, because he claims that some of this is nonfiction. Is this how he feels about people? I think it's more apparent. It's more apparent with how he acts on his YouTube channel, treating everybody like they're lower than him. But anyway, I sense everything I can take in around me, and seemingly limitless audible tones, tremors in the voices of growing children rang in my ear. In studying people, I found myself gradually learning to literally feel the various personality types I encountered. Doubt that, considering, some of his drama and the way he treated people. Not understanding, how people felt. But whatever. I hyper-analyzed every inconsistent smell, the seemingly random clothing styles, freckles, and assorted hairstyles filled my mind with question, trying to rationalize and understand what sequence of events led them to decide who they would become. I took favor of categorizing most everyone around me. The socially inept know-it-all, the dumb, attention-seeking drama kid, and the bleach blonde bimbo who gets overly defensive at the slightest hint of criticism. Then there were the kids who just hoped no one noticed them at all. There was so much to be seen and to be considered and organized in my mind. Class had just ended, so I walked over to Mr. Hansen's desk and placed the tardy note down in passing. As I walked out with the rest of my class, he called after me, "James, we still need to talk." I responded, but continued to walk outside of the room. "I have to be early to my next class. Let's talk tomorrow." I walked quickly down the hall towards my art class, which was awkwardly placed in a trailer outside my clearly poorly funded high school. On my way to the class, a fight had already broken out between two jocks who no doubt both had controlling, iron-fisted fathers who brainwashed them into believing conflicts between men are best resolved with the bloodying of their fists. These kinds of men plagued my mind with wonder. I could not conceive a scenario in which they could justify their primitive and pointless mentalities, yet they would always continue to perpetrate their self-destructive attitudes as if it offered slightest legitimate benefit. Most everyone nearby crowded around the fight. None of them likely cared who was winning, what it was about, or how far it went. All they ever seemed to show concern for was their own amusement. Always excited to see violence without having to put out their wallets to pay for it. As the sounds of flesh collided fist to cheek and chest, quickly followed the howls from the surrounding students. They would scream, "Oh," as if it were sincerely delightful to witness creatures like themselves suffer and fall apart before their eyes. It's sad that he, considers, people as students. And I'm kind of wondering if he actually was in really kind of downgraded or low funded school. That would be fucked up, but it's sad. Again, it's sad to hear Onision classify humans as just creatures. Even if I had time to stop, I never really took pleasure in seeing strangers hurt each other. Most all fights seemed avoidable and were often initiated for a senseless reason. I know, you could say it's more complicated than that. It is. I would like to think it were as well, but reality trumps the way I wish things would be. There's no sense in fighting it when doing so rarely helps anyone. As I approached my next class, the image of Abby's face illuminated the neon walls of my mind like a projector teasing a theater screen with fleeting moments of depth and purpose. Ever since I met her, she had occupied a part of my consciousness Whenever I wasn't near her, I missed her to an unrealistic extent. You could call my longing sad, especially considering we had barely talked. I mean, with the kind of person Greg is, it'd be more concerning, creepy, knowing his character. She just had a strange effect on me. One no doubt. Similar. That it's worded weird. I've one. Okay, so ironically, take out because I think he's trying to say no doubt similar, but he puts one in there, and I'm talking about the number one. So ONE, one, no doubt, similar to a willful addiction. There are people in life which we pass by on a daily basis, barely aware of their existence, but on an exceptionally rare occasion, you can find a person who fills an area inside your little world you didn't even realize needed filling. Okay? As I walked up the creaking stairs into my art class trailer, I could see Abby was sitting at her shared desk alone. Same makeup, hairstyle, and general appearance I had thought about repeatedly over the last couple of days. She was drawing pictures on her blue line paper, distracting herself from the cold that filled the oddly glowing room. I smiled slightly, trying not to be too obvious, and sat down on my chilled metal chair, positioned a few seats to the left in front of her. Glancing over, I could see she hadn't moved at all. I felt like she didn't even notice me come in. I wanted to inspire some acknowledgement of my existence from Abby, so I opened my mouth to greet her when my fingers brushed up against freshly smeared gum under my desk. "Ew," I shouted out on impulse. She looked up at me with a blank expression. Bursting into the room came a group of boys. "Dude, I think John's done, bro." One of the other boys laughed, saying, "Won't see them for a week at least." I looked back at Abby to see she also didn't react to their outburst, strangely knowing that her apathy was generalized and impersonal gave me comfort. Her influence on how I felt was obviously dangerous, but I didn't care, as no matter how fond I was of the idea that I was not of the world, I knew my place and had no real interest in pretending otherwise. Jason, one of the boys, energetically praising the fight they had just seen, sat in his seat next to Abby. I smirked, watching her shoulders shift away from him. Her body language sent a loud message that she had the same impressions of James as I did. He was just another moron, placed on this earth to live his life completely unexamined, a pawn that had no awareness of its own role, let alone that it was just another tiny component within a massive, unstoppable, twisted game. I know it sounds morbid and condescending, it is, but my attitude was just something that naturally developed the more I studied human behavior. I keep saying this, but knowing his prior behaviors, or at least what we got to see through him and his YouTube channel, this is basically him to a T, especially with somebody who, pays close attention to human behaviors and manipulates people. I would be more optimistic, but I find doing so would be like walking into a room with no windows and turning out the lights. If I refuse to see the world around you for what it is, you're just wasting your eyes. I kind of feel like this could have been reworded. If you refuse to see the world around you for what it is... Okay, no, never mind. Maybe it's not. I thought for some reason it just sounded wrong. Okay. We still got quite a bit for this chapter. But our class was about to begin. My teacher, Miss Stanley, who looked like she had or should have retired a ridiculous 30 years ago, approached the front of the room, talking about how art is sacred. She also discussed the random objects she had us all draw the previous school day, and ironically graded it by using her own narrow-minded definition of art. I always wondered how teachers could even attempt objectively grading art. Is there any logic behind validating a form of self-expression using a cold blank and white mathematical system? Today I'm going to place you with partners, Miss Stanley said, as she pulled out sheets of paper outlining our activities to come. To keep this simple, I'm going to partner you with the person you are currently assigned to share a desk with, she said. I sighed, knowing I was bound to be paired up with Alex, a guy I had specifically asked to be seated away from ever since he peed in a jar literally right next to me under our desk, acting like he was so cool for publicly exposing himself while simultaneously urinating. It happened weeks ago, and I still can't figure out what kind of crazy it takes for you to, in the presence of people you barely know but have to see nearly on a daily basis, pee in a jar held in your hand just beneath your desk in the middle of a class. What then? You show it off like you will be praised and accepted as if it were an accomplishment. Alex, despite being borderline mental, was one of my least favorite people to study. I couldn't help but feel there was some defect in his mind that invalidated the point of conducting a thorough analysis of him. He was completely irrelevant when considering the realities of normal human behavior. As I was off on a tangent in my mind, I heard a familiar voice ring out, one that inspired the very same emotion you experience when a song you had forgotten you loved randomly plays in the background of your daily life. Can I be paired up with James? Her voice was just as I remembered. Despite her having not spoken in class in some time, she hadn't changed a note. Abby had interrupted the teacher just to partner with me. But I asked if it was really just to work with me or just to get away from James. Yeah, grammar there. But I asked because I'm going to reread it. But I asked myself, if was it that this dude can't fucking write for shit. The teacher looked irritated but understanding Abby's discomfort with Jason, responded, Alex and Jason, you'll be partners. James switched seats with Jason, thank you, Abby said, with a slight smile. With a cocky grin, Jason stood up and, in a comedic fashion, smelled his armpits. Wow, I didn't know I smelled that bad. Jason said as he walked over to sit by Alex. Approaching Abby was no doubt a way scarier act in my mind than it was to everyone around me. I felt, as I turned the page, like my head was burning from the inside out. Nevertheless, I continued to remind myself that her public outcry to partner with me could have meant nothing. I sat down next to her and did all I could not to turn into a complete dork on her. She reached out and grabbed the project outline that was being passed out. Miss Stanley began to read the description of the assignment. Today you will both be taking something meaningful but expendable from your own homes. And then Miss Stanley looked up and emphasized that you own. Then looked down at her paper. You will tear those items apart with here in the classroom. You will then take those items and using the adhesive, staples, and strings available in class, find a way to create something new out of those precious. Okay. She looked up and said in a low voice, sounding somewhat like Dracula, 2 will become 1. That's really weird. Really, really weird indeed. Jason raised his hand, objecting. All due respect, Miss Stanley, I'm not breaking something of mine for this class, she replied, putting her hands on her lips. That's fine, Jason. We'll supply you with a toilet paper roll. We have plenty of extras around here. Jason suddenly looked disturbed and sarcastically spouted, freaking great. Miss Stanley asked, are you sure? Your grade shouldn't suffer that much if you to just take Alex's piss jar and tape it on a toilet paper roll. You're already failing this class. Jason couldn't believe that she had just said that. And Alex, maintaining an awkward, frozen facial expression, with his mouth slightly open in his normal, weirdo, somewhat robotic fashion. Oh my god, Abby whispered under her breath with a slight snicker. I grinned uncontrollably. Just seeing her amused was amazing to me. I could hear a scream in the back of my mind reminding me my dorkiness and borderline obsession was escaping through my face. It's not that I couldn't help being in awe of Abby and basically every little thing she did. I simply didn't want to change how I felt. In a way, she was like your favorite song or book. You could pretend not to like it, and in time, with the right mental coaching, maybe you could sincerely dislike it, but life just felt so much better embracing your condition entirely, letting all your nerdy ambitions flow freely. Miss Stanley continued, if there's anyone else who has an issue, please take it up with my 1-800 number, which is, and she put her hand up to the air, signaling the students to react, but only a couple of kids replied aloud with her catchphrase, 1-800-BOO-HOO. They mumbled. She continued, good. Now for the rest of the class, please work with your partner on what you plan to bring and draw a prototype sketch of what you feel your final piece of art will look like. Miss Stanley walked to the back of the room and sat down at her 1950s looking rust infested desk. I would always laugh at internally when I looked at the old thing. Maybe it was my way of coping with the fact that I attended one of the most rundown schools in the state. "What are you going to bring?" James Abby asked. It was amazing hearing my name pass her lips, but I had no time to think. If I didn't respond right away, she would think I was totally awkward. "I have no idea," I responded. Smiling, she said, "I'm going to bring my hamster cage." I asked, "Did he die or something?" She laughed. "No, I got a new one. The cage was just a gift from my dad." "My dad didn't get a hamster for the cage," I asked. "Or your dad didn't get you a hamster for the cage?" I asked. She paused and started to lose her smile. At the first sign of her smile fading, I felt a crushing pressure on my chest. "Hopefully you can find something that will work with that," she said. I couldn't help but feel like a total jerk despite not even knowing what I did wrong. I had the overwhelming urge to feel or fix how she felt. So I took a gamble. "Well, I could always bring that weird vibrating thing my mom hides in the drawer, all wrapped up in cloth," I said. She bursted out laughing hysterically as a huge grin filled my face. I was so happy to get her to smile again. "Ew, James," she continued laughing as the extent of my grin began to stress my cheeks. I couldn't remember a time when I was this obvious about how I felt. Abby's laughing trailed off and she paused. Turning to me, she said, "You didn't actually... your mom's?" I responded, "No, I wouldn't know about that, but glad it made you laugh." She responded, returning to a soft laugh. "You're more goofy than I thought, James." I sat down to her, looking at my fingers interlaced in front of me. My wide smile relaxed, but still filled my cheeks with warmth. As class came to a close, Abby patted me on the arm. I turned and she handed me a note. Instinctively, I put it in my pocket and said, "See you tomorrow." She just smiled and walked away. On my way to my next class, I opened the note. I didn't understand why, but it read, Nisei-wan. Nisei-wan. Not knowing what to make of it, and with little time, I stuffed it back into my pocket to look over. Wait, hold on. Hold on a sec. I want to try something. So, Nisei-wan. Trying to think. Okay, no, never mind. I was gonna see if the letters fit, but just to try something else, if anything. Let's try... I'm like looking it up right now. Okay, I don't know what that means. But I'm sure we'll probably, figure it out. Good lord. But continuing. Not feeling like skating home, I got on the bus to see all the normal rejects and misfits waiting. Davis, a short and scrawny kid who had been my best friend since middle school, despite being one grade behind me, excitedly waved me over. "James, nice to see you," he said in seemingly the dorkiest way possible. I smiled as he stood up, giving me the window seat, knowing very well by then that I preferred it. As I sat down and began looking out the window, analyzing the little humans running left and right to get on their buses. Again, sad that, wants to downgrade friggin' humanity. Something reached out and caught the corner of my eye. I immediately shifted my head to see what it was and quickly realized it was Abby standing in the parking lot by some beat-up sedan. "What you looking at, James?" Davis asked. Without hesitation, I began to respond. "Oh, it's Abby. She's in my art club." My head sank as I witnessed a boy I barely knew, named Seth, walk up and kiss Abby on the lips. "James," Davis said, but by the point his voice was a faint echo in the darkness, my mind instantaneously lost itself in. I felt like after a life of numbness, I was finally about to truly feel warmth for the first time, only to have it all taken away in an instant, leaving me hopeless in the shadows, alone once again. Okay. I looked down at my knees, feeling as if I lost all muscle control in my neck. "Are you okay?" Davis asked. I responded and with hesitation, "I'm just stupid." "No, you're not. You're one of the coolest guys I know." Clearly not. But whatever. Davis replied. I continued my silence as he offered words of encouragement. "Okie dokie. Well, you're awesome and you should be super happy if you want to talk, I'm your buddy, so I'm here to talk." I was too focused on the conflict raging in my mind to hear anyone at that point. I couldn't think about anything but Seth kissing Abby the entire trip. That night, my mom was literally just serving lentil beans she prepared on her crock pot for the billionth time. A fair exaggeration, but still, it was excessive to say the least. My sister was behaving as she usually did at the dinner table, talking about how stupid she thought school was and how she couldn't wait for college. How was work, Mom?" I asked, trying to keep my mind off the haunting images looping in my mind. "Well, no one at work respects me or listens to me, and I generally can't stand it, but, we still have food on the table," she said in a stern tone. My sister barked as food flew out of her mouth. Would it be in? Well, at least it's not high school. I'm learning how to be a successful person from a bunch of low-income losers. My mom replied, "Whatever your teachers are, they have full-time jobs, which is more than a lot of people can say." My mom gave my sister Lisa a disappointed look. Lisa was well known for showing little respect for the hard-working people. To her, it didn't matter how much you gave back to society, it only mattered how much money you made. After the rerun of lentil soup, I washed the dishes per my mom's orders and headed to the shower. I sat on the floor of the tub thinking about Abby, barely feeling the water as it hit my chest. I was so consumed with what I had seen that I had completely forgotten the note until the moment I quickly reached over to my pants resting on the toilet. I had hoped to read it wrong the first time and that it would make sense with a second look, only to see it read exactly what I gathered in my initial passing glance. Okay. Nisewan, I mumbled to myself. I joked with the idea in my head that she handed me the wrong note, but still assumed it wasn't a failed attempt to say nice one, which could be taken as a compliment if you were desperate enough. Seconds into looking at the note, my eyes widened. Having figured out what it meant, I jumped up, slipping to my feet and screamed, yeah, I had cracked it. And only to immediately after feel completely stupid for not having figured it out sooner. My mom screamed through the door from her bedroom. What? I responded, sorry, nothing. I hurried to finish showering, staring at my phone, wearing only a towel. I smiled as I typed in Nisei1 or 6473663 into the number keys. I assumed we shared the same area. Otherwise, she might, or likely, would have given me a longer sequence of letters, and I was right. After 2 rings, I got an answer. What do you want? A disgruntled man's voice asked, like a bad engine struggling to start in a monster movie. I clumsily belted out a response. I was looking for... An enthusiastic female voice in the background said, give me the phone. Whatever, he said, dropping the phone in front of her. Hello? I could recognize the voice now. It was Abby. Trying to hide my excitement by maintaining a normal tone, I said, this is James. Abby excitedly screamed and responded, oh, you figured it out. Hearing her optimistic tone, I laughed, saying, so why? She interrupted, I was hoping to find out if you figured out what you're bringing to art class, she said. Oh, and looked quickly around my room. I couldn't see anything immediately, so I just said, I'll surprise you. She then replied, oh, come on, tell me. My eyes locked on to a plausible item for the project. How about my bear? I'll bring my bear, I said. She replied, oh, okay, oh, I have an idea. Instead of the cage, I'll bring in a stuffed animal of mine, and we'll make like a zombie bear. I laughed. Awesome. I said, okay, I'll see you tomorrow. Okay, she replied happily. I answered, okay, bye. Just before she hung up, I could still hear her laughing, leaving me with a sense of accomplishment and at least smiling, or a lasting smile. Accomplishment and a lasting smile, as if it were painted across my face. And that is the end of chapter 1. That was really long. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said, there's going to be a couple times where I'm reading and I'll probably correct myself with mistakes, or give my thoughts about certain mistakes, as well as give my thoughts about the writing itself. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys can, please leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, all the good stuff. If you guys want to follow us on social media, links are in the description down below, as well as check out our daily content and the weekly podcast. With that being said, this is Rob Novakast signing off. Have a good one, take care, and peace.